All right, today I wanted to talk about Andor, a Star Wars story. So the Andor is set kind of as a prequel to Rogue One, following the character Andor. From there, and then this one we'll kind of be talking about episodes 4, 5, and 6, and kind of all over from there. And so what I wanted to talk about today is Andor. These episodes take place over, as we'll call this, the heist episodes, because what we've been given is, we know from the previous episodes that this mysterious character Luthen, who's incredibly rich sort of guy, is kind of sponsoring. He's somehow connected with the rebellion. We don't really know exactly, but he flies. Him and Cassian escape from Ferrix, from the Pre-Mor guards, that shootout, that ambush, everything that they had from there. And Luthen says, hey, listen, I've got a job for you. You could really strike back at the Empire. And they kind of go back because Cassian's like, I don't want this. I'm just here to, he has his own mission that we actually don't really cover a whole lot of, which will probably come up in some of the later episodes from here, because he was looking for his sister. We kind of got to see some of his past on whatever island planet he was on prior, and so it may not necessarily be a blood sister, could just be a sister, some sort of familial tribal sort of thing that they have going on with them. So he's looking for his sister. This is kind of in the backdrop of him saying, I don't want anything to do with it, and Luthen offers him 200,000 credits if he will go along with this job from there. And he's like, oh man, okay. And so what happens is they fly down to this planet, the planet of Aldhani, and they're kind of right in the middle of the nowhere, and it looks like Luthen is meeting with this woman, and they are apparently planning a heist. And this is what's going on. They're planning a heist. This is the quarterly wages for the entire empire in this sector. So it's a lot of dollar bills from here. And so he meets Luthen, Luthen's meeting this lady, and he goes, hey, I have somebody new for you. And she's like, what? Are you kidding me? This late? We're so close. We can't change the plan. He's like, nope, you need to take him. You need more people who are doing this, or we're calling it off, because we don't have enough people. You guys don't have enough people. You don't have people with the skills. Like, he speaks all the languages. He knows how to lie. He knows how to keep his cool. He's a pilot. Like, you guys, you need him from there. And this is kind of going through it. And then she finally acquiesces and finally agrees to take him back to the team. And this is what we're beginning. We're beginning kind of a new arc in terms of this sequence from here. We met Vel, as we've come to find out her name, and she's kind of grumpy, but she takes him back because she finally agrees to see Luthen's point of view, because he's right. They're fighting up. They really don't have a whole lot. And so what we're doing here, though, is from a story perspective and a story writing perspective, is we are preparing a heist. We're preparing a heist storyline from here. And there's usually a few things that really help in sort of telling a heist. And this is what I kind of want you to think of as we'll go through these different plot lines from here. Is usually what we always have the crew. The crew is who's going to be in the heist with us, who's going to be there. Usually the Ocean's Level style or anything like that, where you have, this is Chainsaw, the explosives guy. This is Dog Man, who's the muscle, or, you have all these catchphrases. That's kind of cheesy sort of deal, but it's kind of the superhero-esque sort of heist. Go from there. But this one, again, it's funny because even though it's a, sci-fi and all this sorts of deal, what it's going for a very realistic sort of approach, which means this is a ragtag crew. This is the type of crew that you could pull together at a moment's notice, not really at a moment's notice, but it's not going to be the best in the galaxy. Like, by far, as you realize and kind of go through, is that actually, it turns out Cassian may be higher qualified than a lot of them for this stuff, just because he seems to know more about the Empire, know more about stealing stuff in general, and kind of scavenging and playing this type of role than a lot of these people do from there. And so what we have to do when it comes to introducing the crew is you have to figure out a way to interlace it with the story, because what you don't want to have is like an introduction scene where every character gets up and says, hello, I am this person, and this is what I can do. Because that's really just really cheesy, really blocky. It doesn't work. So what we have to do is you have to interlace the crew and understanding them, getting to know them throughout the rest of the plot from here. And so that's what the story does. Is essentially it's interweaving all these introductions, and this includes, this is characters' backstory. This is their motivations. Let's see. Yeah, basically all of that. The dynamic, who likes who, anything like this, sort of deal. All of this is kind of coming into fruition and kind of playing out from here. And this is what you want to have interwoven in between this sequence from here. The other thing that the story does really well is, again, we're still jumping around the galaxy. So we're going to have, one section is going to be on Aldhani. The next section is going to follow some other characters who will come up either this arc or later in this episode from here. So one of them is Mon Mothma. I can't really... Mothrin, we'll just call her Mon. Mrs. Mon. She's the senator lady. I actually didn't realize until later that she actually appears in episode 6 from here. But this is kind of to get her sort of backstory as well and her role in this so far. And what we're doing, though, is all of the scenes with these other people is something that I really appreciate that they do is they're really short. They're like 30 seconds to 2 minutes, basically minimum. That's kind of like the at most from here. What this does is we care about Cassian right now. That's what the story has invested us to care about Cassian, and Luthen. So Luthen. We care about Luthen. So it makes sense then when we see Luthen and the senator lady meet and we realize they're kind of secretly undercover working together to try and get funds to the rebellion and fund all these different action points from here. What you have is we care about Luthen. So the scene with Luthen and the senator lady can be prolonged. It's a fairly long scene. We introduce her. But then all the scenes from then on with her are very, very short because we actually don't really care for her just yet. It's nothing against her, nothing personal. It's just we haven't had time to get invested in her, to get drawn into the story with her. So this is something that I really appreciate that the story does, is that it doesn't force us to spend time with or try to trick us or, say, hey, you really want to know about X character doing Y. And the fact is that most of the time we don't. And this is something that I really appreciate about the story is that it doesn't try and force us to see all these different backstories or anything like that. It is focused on the heist and Cassian from here. And this is something that is really, really nice because you can't just suddenly throw in a 10-minute backstory about a character because actually usually what it'll do, especially if the character is not super well liked or established or hasn't been established, why should the audience like this person? And if that hasn't been established, then a long backstory is just going to make me hate them more because it's like, this is pointless and this is boring and from there. And so this is something that I really do appreciate. We have a character like Lieutenant Gorn from here. And we don't really need too much about his backstory. And this is what makes him such a good character in terms of that is because they're like, why is he helping us? Well, he fell in love with an Aldhani girl, and she died. And he really became disillusioned with the Empire. And this is his backstory. Bam. We don't need to see it. We don't need anything more. We need this tight, focused sort of thing from there. And it makes it so, I don't know, it just does such a good job with it because it makes it kind of mysterious because it has a bunch of questions that it doesn't try and answer. It's this reality where we don't get 100% of the story all the time. We're getting these little snippets and we're paying attention because we want to know more from here. And this is what just does such a good job from here. And so what it does also with the story is it allows this time to pass kind of fairly well in terms of ease, where you have, this is a sequence with Cassian and the crew, and they're preparing, and then it jumps to the senator lady, and then we have a new story arc, which is the security lady. I think her name is Mira, I want to say, from there. And she's working for the Empire. And she's kind of looking from the Empire on. Because what we had before, we had Karn, who we also have his part. He is the security guy who completely failed and blew everything up on Ferrix. And so he's been fired and he's been sent home. And this is another example of, probably the best example of not forcing the audience to sit through plot and character and stuff that they didn't want, is we do not like Karn. And the reason why, because he's an antagonist. We built him up to be an antagonist. We built him up to root for him to fail, and he did. And now he has to live with that failure. But does the audience want to sit and watch scenes that wallow in pity? You know, I talked about this where the audience generally likes characters who are competent, even if they're evil. You know, Littlefinger, Silco from Arcane, Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones. All these people, none of them are good people, but they're highly competent. You know, Dijkstra from The Witcher, from there, Geralt is not necessarily your cookie cutter good person. Joel, you know, these people are competent. Joel from The Last of Us. These are not necessarily a cookie cutter Boy Scout moral-minded people, but people like them. So we've had this character that we do not like, and does it force us to watch, you know, all these long sequences of how painful it is to be, you know, how sad and how depressed? And no, it's very short clips, which is it's perfect because it's like right when the audience begins to get bored or tired of it, it cuts to something new. It cuts to back, you know, to the senator lady. We get to watch the senator lady. We watch the security lady from there. And so, of course, now with Karn, he's been fired, so we don't have a perspective from inside the Empire, and we can work on developing Karn into a different direction. He could become a good guy, you know. Maybe he does become a good guy. We don't know. Maybe he's going to keep hunting after Cassian in some interesting way. Probably this one, or it could be both from there. But we need to kind of develop that from there. The security lady gives us the point of view from inside the Empire that we didn't have before, or we had with Karn, and now that he's been fired, we need from here. So right as the audience is getting bored, we're able to switch this. This also gives the passage of time. This allows us to clearly kind of show the audience and kind of let them see as, okay, things are moving forward from here. So what we can have is we can have a training sequence where, you know, they're learning to march like stormtroopers here, and then we can cut from here to the security lady from here, and then we can cut over here to the senator lady. I guess I need new initials. And then we can go over here to Luthen, and then we can go over here to Karn and his mom from here. You know, this is the thing where it's like the scene with Karn and his mother, you know, it's where, and he's like, Mom, and she slaps him, and then she hugs him and says, I love you. You know, and this is the other thing when it comes to effective and, you know, powerful story writing, is you don't need a big scene. You instantly understand what their dynamic is from this one scene. You know, he comes home, she slaps him, and then she hugs him, and then she's like, come on in. And then he's just like, you know, he's sitting there, you know, they're sitting there at their table, and he's eating his weird, you know, their weird little cubby hole. And she's over here, and she's like, you know, I'm talking to your uncle. And he's like, I hate my uncle. Or he's more like, I hate my life. He's basically, I hate my life. And he's eating his weird green emerald and cereal, his Cocoa Puffs from here. And he's just sitting there saying, oh my gosh, I hate my life. This is so obnoxious. I hate this. And you know what? If he hates it, why does the audience want to watch it for that long? We do not. And so what it does, the show gives us about 30 seconds, 2 minutes, bam, move on to the next one. And it continually develops and push, boom, 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 from there. And this is such a good thing where it doesn't ever lull. There is no lull. And this is what it is, because what we're trying to build is tension. We're trying to build this ever-growing tension, this tightening of the coil as things get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter from here. Because from a story writing perspective, what we're doing with this heist is we want a build-up. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have one episode over here for this, and that looks like a 2 from here, and then we're going to have the heist is going to be here. This is going to be, you know, heist. This is build-up. Because what you want, this is kind of the tricky part that comes with things, is you ever wonder why Naruto always has, people look back on Naruto, for those of you who don't know, Naruto is an anime, it has this, it's well known for having these super long, great fights. That's probably what everyone remembers is the fight, Naruto versus Pain, Naruto versus whatever. These are the fights that people remember, because the thing is there's this build-up. The build-up is like 80 episodes long, basically, from here. The whole Pain arc is just absolutely crazy, and it's continually, maybe even longer than maybe it's like 120 episodes or something from here. And it's this crazy slow build-up. And so what the thing is, the longer the build-up, the more satisfying the payoff is going to be. The tricky part is, the longer you take on this build-up, the more risk you have to lose interest. And if you lose the interest, then of course people stop watching, and they're going to say, yep, that's boring. That's that boring thing. I'm not going to watch that because it's just boring. Because it's just nothing but this, nothing but this. It never, I never actually lasted long enough from here. But what you do want is you want it to be enough of a build-up so that people will value, and you can build that tension up. Because all the tension that we're going to be carrying into this heist has to be built up over this. This is where you make the audience like the characters. We've got this crew. We've got the crew. We've got, all these different. We got Nemec, who's the young kid, the idealist. From here, we have Skeen, who's this, very suspicious, the broody guy from the bear who's always yelling at his cousin about ordering the wrong spaghetti sauce. You have all these different characters. You have Taramin, the ex-stormtrooper, who really did look like a soldier guy. He carried himself very much in a soldierly manner. So this is the other thing the show does. They have great side actors, the actors who do the little roles. Unlike that lady who owned the spaceport on that one planet in Mandalorian, who every time she got on the show, I was just like, this is terrible. From there. And then you have Cinti, who is kind of the silent killer. She's a broody type. And then you have Vel, of course. And then this is where Cassian comes in. He's known as Clem in this because he's got a fake name. Because why would you use your real name? This is something out of Reservoir Dogs, where you're Mr. Orange, you're Mr. Pink, Mr. Black. But nobody's Mr. Black, because you guys would all fight over it. And because what you're doing is, this is what smart people do. When you're getting ready to take on the Empire, you don't use your real name. You don't tell anybody about yourself. You have this. You're in a job. You're there to do it. You get out, move on, goodbye. And so that's where this build-up comes into play, because we have to introduce the characters. We have to weave in their backstory. And we have to make it seem natural, because just introducing a character and then giving us like a few minutes of backstory, it's just not, again, we're building this from Cassian's point of view. And anytime you're having this, 100% omnipresent point of view, it does kind of remove it from that. Well, maybe that's not true. I'm not quite sure on that one, because we do have this with Luthen, but everything's kind of from Luthen's point of view from there. So maybe that's not right. Maybe it's just more efficient. It's more story efficient in terms of the tension that you're trying to build. Because what we want this heist to be just gripping the whole way through. We want everyone just to be like, oh my God, this tension, this is that Quentin Tarantino scene where they're down in that basement, and that Nazi guard is there, this whole thing where this is the tension that you're going for in terms of what's going to happen, where you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for something to explode. And this is what you need to build up. So what this means is we need to have a slow build up. But it has to be interesting, or else the audience is going to quit. Like this is the kind of the push and the pull, is because you need this. This is the slow dance after the fast dance. This is the intense moments. But right before that, you need to have the build-up. This is the slow build-up from here in order to have this payoff. This is Freebird, the movie. It's like, if you just started, or not the movie, the song, if you just started with the solo, the guitar solo that it's known for, it's not as good a song. You need to have this build-up that kind of gets you there and gets you to the right spot. And this is where these episodes come into play, because this tension, this characters, all of this stuff is going to do it, because this is essentially what they're doing, is they're saying, we're going to make you like the characters. And then when the audience cares about characters, whatever the characters care about, the audience does as well. And so it's this transfer where we like the characters. We actually like Nemec. He's a little bit awkward. He's a little bit odd, but he's kind of the idealist. He's always talking about the philosophy of the rebellion and freedom and trying to figure it all out. We have Skeen, who's very suspicious of Cassian, but at the same point, they kind of seem to have a similar understanding of the world. They're talking about these tattoos that Skeen, I forgot his name for a second, Skeen has from there. Terriman, you don't really have much of him, but he's, you kind of get more respect. He kind of respects Cassian a little bit more because Cassian knows what he's talking about. He's like, oh, you're left-handed, you're right-handed. These people, he's paying attention. He knows what's going on. These little breadcrumb moments which kind of bond the crew together and have this. So that way we can care about this. So now the characters are focusing and building towards this heist moment. The other element that does such a good job in this thing is this whole event called the Eye, where on this planet you have these, they call it, initially it's thought to be meteors, but it's actually like light crystals, are shooting over from here, and this is going to provide them the cover for their escape. But this is such a good world building event. There's a lot of these holidays are something that make up a vast majority and will be the most important time of our lives every year. So it makes sense in a sci-fi world, in a world other, that they have these different types of holidays, but generally you don't see them. So this is the thing, that these little bitty things that help make worlds feel real, really real. Religion, actually well-built religion that's just not knockoff Catholic evil church, that everyone loves to do. Religion is a good one. Swear words are phenomenal if you can pull them off, because it's really hard to make them seem natural at this point. Holidays, it's hard to make people care about your tradition. There's thousands of holidays all around the world that I don't really care about. No offense, they don't care about mine, but because you have to be grown, you kind of have to grow up in that culture in order to have a real appreciation for them. But this is what it takes to build a real culture, a real society, and a real world that feels real, which tells the audience that, hey, the stakes are high. This means that this is real from here. And so what we've got is we've got all of this building together towards this heist. Everyone's kind of pointing to the heist, to the heist. Everything's building toward. They're practicing all these steps from here for this moment. And this is what we get into episode 6 from here, is the actual heist itself. And this is one thing that I think a lot of heist stories do, which is really clever, is the audience doesn't know the full plan from here, because what it means is when we're watching I think you could do it where the audience knows the full plan or something like that. That could work out fairly well. You could have it deviate from the full plan and then it goes off kilter and the audience is trying to figure out and understand what's going on. But for this one, the audience doesn't know the full plan. They know half of it. So what it is, or a portion of it, what it is it's kind of a mystery. We're going to see how they're going to do it. How are they going to pull off this, crazy heist for 80 million credits from here. So what it actually does is it starts off, the heist is the 4 guys. So this is Nemec, Skeen, Cassian, or Clem, as he's known as, and Terriman are disguised as guards. They get some uniform that Lieutenant Gorn has snuck them. And what it's going is, for this whole event, the Aldani people, these, kind of nomadic, shepherd sorts of people, are all gathered around for this event that happens once every 3 years. It's called the Eye from here. They're going to this sacred, little setup, get up from here, and it's supposed to be, the correct moment from here that they're going to religious significance, shall we say, from here. And so they're going to this one spot, and what it is these people are coming up here, and, we've kind of been viewing some of this from the point of view of the commander, the commander who's in charge of everything. And so we're getting an inside picture, not just from Gorn. And so these guys come up and they begin escorting some of the Aldani people, and there's this confusion from some of the other guards because they're like, I've never seen this man before. It's this great tension moment where everyone's like, oh, they're going to realize it, but then Gorn kind of covers for them. Gorn is on top of it. He orders these people around. They are jumping when he says jump from here. So he covers for them and he's like, all right, move up, get a move on, stop lollygag, and they just go on. And so what happens is the commander and his family, so his wife, and Son are down there to meet with the leader of the Aldani and exchange hides, some goat hides, in order for this, ceremony, which is such a big, loser thing to do as far as the commander's concerned. But they're going to do it because it makes everything better and whatnot from here. And so they're down there, they come back up and they begin heading back up. And at all this point, as the audience, we're waiting to see what are they going to do? What actually is the plan? And at this point, when the family gets back up into this armory sort of inside at this one point, they act. So what happens is they hold them at gunpoint and, do what we say or else we'll shoot. And this is the part where it's interesting, where each... as a story writer and as a story, you have to figure out, because you can't have a plan be too perfect. It also can't, you generally don't want it to go too wrong. You want your characters' plan to work because they're smart. Smart characters have good plans from here. It also needs to, if you want your characters to get away with it, then everything can't collapse. Otherwise, if everything fell apart, how did they actually escape? If everything went wrong, how did they still get out from the end? So you kind of have this balance from here. So you have to, it can't be too perfect, but it needs to just be enough from here. And so there's this engineer guy that's with the commander and his family. And he pulls a gun out and holds it to their head, holds it to Nemik's head, and is getting ready to shoot it. And Nemik is one of those guys that you probably would feel the most attached, because he's the most vulnerable with the audience. So you feel, you're hoping that he doesn't get shot, as opposed to Skeen, where you're kind of like, it's okay. I don't want him to die, but it'll be okay from there. And from here, and then Sinti shows up and shoots the engineer, bam, and then they kind of go. So you have this tension moment where things don't go according to plan, bam, back on schedule from there. And then they're heading down to the basement where all of these coins are, and then they capture all these like 8 or 10 guard guys down there and basically say, do what we say or we'll shoot you from here. And then they begin loading up all this money, because all this money is actually in like these, these little hexagon, banks from here. And it's just, there's a ton. You might expect that, turns out 80 million credits is a lot of money and it's really heavy and you have to carry it. And all this stuff is correct. And so this is kind of the reality of the stories. In order to carry all of this to the ship, it's going to take a while. And so that's why they get these guards to do the carrying from here. And they're pushing them, threatening them, go, 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 go. And what it does is it takes time. It's still, they're saying it's taking like 10 minutes to load all this stuff. We got 10 minutes before we need to get out of here. And this is like times like 8 or more. There's like 8 of these. So they're trying to load these onto this transport ship that they're going to steal and escape from. That part we know from. And they're trying to get this. They have Sinti splits up and they're in this kind of headquarters-like place. And they're Sinti and Vel split up. So they're kind of in this headquarter place overlooking everything. And they have the wife plus the son. And of course, the commander goes downstairs to the basement with them, with these guys down here where the actual money is. And they say, do what we say or death, basically. From here, and then he's trying to, and the commander really believes them. And so this whole aspect, and while it keeps cutting back and forth between, you're seeing what's going on at other points in the galaxy. We even jump to a point with Luthen to see him like, oh, I really hope everything goes okay. And it's building towards this tension. The other thing is, it's really, other than maybe I think a jump to Luthen, the story stops skipping around. I talked about how this is like this and this and this and this, and it jumps around. For the heist, most of it is just focused on the heist. We're in time. It doesn't jump time sequences or anything like that. We are focused on the heist. And they're trying to load these, and it's taking too long, and there's, this thing. And then some more guards come down and discover it, and they're like, what's going on? And then Gorn tries to, talk them out of it. He fails, failed deception check. And institutes a gunfight. And so what happens is, in the gunfight, Gorn is shot. From here, Terramin is shot. A bunch of the guards are shot from here, but the crew does actually manage to load up and get into this spaceship and fly away. So they're kind of in this little bitty transport ship with these little bay doors. it's actually a fairly well-designed ship as far as like, what it looks like to what it's supposed to do. Nothing too fancy though. And it's blasting off from here, and it's honestly nothing really that fancy. Because again, it's a transport ship. It just needs to transport. So they blast off and they're trying to escape under cover of the eye because, of course, they have all these TIE fighters, which they actually had interlaced throughout the beginning episodes of this buildup where these TIE fighters who make that amazing sound would easily be able to shoot them down if it weren't for this natural event, which again would seem very convenient, some sort of thing where it's like, oh, I bet you just pulled that out of where. But it turns out that he didn't, because they've interlaced it and built up the eye. This whole event, this whole time, this is part of the plan. From here, Nemik suffers pretty much a very bad injury from here, but he manages to use his little arithmetic magical navigation tool, which again, introduced prior in the episodes prior. This thing, it's considered quite cheap and kind of, it kind of takes away from the success of your characters if you have something just pop out that solves all their problems. So you need to introduce this earlier to then have it come up later. We introduced the TIE fighters are very terrifying earlier, so that way this is the fear, avoid the TIE fighters. We got to find a way to deal with the TIE fighters. You have this navigation is going to be an issue, so we have this navigation tool that we've introduced prior from here. And so they are able to escape from here. And this is kind of this breather moment, but it's not over yet because Nemik is dying. He's not looking too good, and they have a contingency plan, it turns out, to go to a doctor. And Skeen, who's always been, really close with Nemik, Skeen and Cassian vote to go to the doctor. Vel is not really super gung-ho on it, but they end up going to the doctor. And this next moment is such a good one where it's this idea of keeping the audience, what happens next? You want them to keep thinking, what happens next? What are they going to do? How are they going to handle it and everything from here? And so what happens is Skeen and Clem, Cassian, are sitting there outside the doctor's hut, and they're talking to each other. And Skeen basically says, hey, why don't we take the money and run? 80 million, you get 40, I'll get 40. Easy peasy. From here. And then Cassian is like, wait, what's going on? What happened to your brother? You told this heartfelt story, after you tried to almost turn me out from the group, about your brother dying, and it was the Empire's fault and all this stuff. And he's like, I don't have a brother. All that was a lie. All that was a lie for me. And this is the reason why this is such a good moment, is because what do you do when you're Cassian? I talked about this kind of in the prior one when I was talking about Andor, is characters, when they're in a situation, we would imagine what we would do in that given situation. So this guy says, hey, let's betray them, potentially, and because this is akin to your saying, it's okay to murder our comrades. This is what this guy is saying. Because if you think, oh, that's not, he just wants to take the money and run, but it's like, okay, what happens if you take the money and Vel finds you? What are you going to do? You're going to shoot her. So this is what Skeen is offering. He's basically saying is we may have to shoot, we're probably not going to have to shoot, but we may have to shoot our comrades and murder them and betray them and take the money and run. The other thing he's offering, it's never trust a betrayer. A spy who, somebody who turns traitor for you will likely turn traitor against you. So now you never trust them. So now Cassian has this question. We, the audience, don't want him to take the deal because we want him to be, the good guy, a good person from here. But we don't know what's going to happen. And so you have this tense moment where it's like, what do you do? Skeen wants to betray everyone, and he's probably going to, potentially murder them, which means you may also be murdered. Because this thing, he's never even liked Cassian. He's hated him from the beginning. It's kind of like this dislike, distaste. But they did have these moments together where you understand why he's, despite all this, because it's like he understood where his tattoos were from, or you understand we're cut from the same cloth. We're both, survivors who look only out for ourselves. And so he thinks there's this comrade, but it turns out Cassian is actually more of a moral or idealist person than he expected from there. And so what does Cassian do? He pops out and shoots him. And this is a moment where it's like, oh my gosh, you just killed the guy. And then now we're, of course, thinking is Vel's not going to believe it. She won't believe us. And she probably won't. But what were you going to do? Because the thing is guess what? If Skeen shot Cassian and told Vel, hey, he was going to betray us, she wouldn't even be that worried, because Luthen even said, he's expendable. That's why you take hired help. They're expendable. That great voice of his. And so he shows up and points the gun at Vel, and Vel's like, oh, you're betraying us now? He's like, this is not what it's looking. I'm taking my money, and I'm out. And then he leaves. And, of course, Nemik, unfortunately, he has not made it. He's dead. Which is pretty sad, because I quite liked his character. They've done so far a really good job with their side characters. This is the thing that makes the show feel so real and do so well, is these side characters are so good. To the point where the Mosk, that, Scottish angry Primor guard, if he showed back up, I hope they bring him back, because he's awesome. He does such a good job. He was a great bad guy in terms of he knew his stuff, and he was an ideologue, just a bulldog, brute enforcer, this low-level enforcer who just he doesn't really care about ideology. He just understands good guys, bad guys, and cracking heads from there. And so this is the point where then Cassian leaves, and then Luthen learns, and the Senator lady learn of the heist. They understand what's happened. And then this is where it ends, because this is the reason why you introduce this character throughout the thing, so that now we can understand the next kind of driver for the plot is the security lady is called, and it's by her boss, and it's all hands on deck. We've been robbed. What is our response? This is the next action, which would seem a little bit to come out of nowhere, but we've been building to this point from here. So all of this comes into play to this. It's been an absolute, this is such a good arc. This episode, they were so good. They did such a good job with this whole affair from here. So, but yeah, I think that covers it. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next.